All right, so start taking a look at genocide in Cambodia, and we just talked a little bit about the do now. So here we go. I'll give you a second here. So with Cambodia and understanding what happened there, it's helpful to kind of take a look back at Vietnam. So during the Cold War unit, we talked about the Vietnam War, and we talked about something called the domino theory. Now, the domino theory said that if one country in a particular part of the world falls to communism, then other countries in that area will follow. So if we remember back to the Vietnam War, the conclusion was that Vietnam was separated into kind of North and South Vietnam, and then eventually they will become unified under a communist government. So Vietnam is essentially a communist government when it's all said and done. So based on the domino theory, that means that other countries in Southeast Asia should follow them and become communist also, and that's true. That is what happens. Cambodia, the neighboring country to the west of Vietnam, they were communist at the time of the Vietnam War, but maybe not communist enough for some people's liking. All right, I'll give you a second. So in the late 60s, Cambodia suffers through a civil war. And this is, let's contextualize, this is happening at the same time that Vietnam is happening, okay? During the Vietnam War, one of the most poorly kept secrets on earth was that the United States was kind of sort of operating out of Cambodia and other parts of Southeast Asia also. So basically, a lot of the hardcore communists in Cambodia blamed their government for allowing the United States to kind of operate out of Cambodia and conduct the Vietnam War from Cambodia. This was the case in some ways, not always, but this tension is what started this civil war. And basically, there was a lot of people in Cambodia that felt like the government was giving away Cambodia to the West, okay? And that's what the basis for the Civil War was. So this group, led by this guy named Pol Pot, kind of a weird name, but he starts this group called the Khmer Rouge, and the Khmer Rouge is going to overthrow the Cambodian government. Now, the government that was in charge of Cambodia originally was communist, but they were kind of a moderate form of communism. They were not this kind of severe, strict form of communism like we've seen in some other places. But Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge are like the most extreme form of communism. So after they overthrow the government, now in charge of Cambodia is like the most communist government that we've seen, okay? So Pol Pot models his form of communism after Mao in China, their neighbors to the north. So this is going to be what Cambodian communism is modeled after, and this is how it comes about. Okay, so with every example of genocide, we need to identify who is the target. And in this particular instance, the target is everyone who is not communist enough. Okay? So this is one of those things where they're targeting everyone who is not a certain thing. Okay? And they're targeting everyone who is not super hardcore communist. Those are the people that are being targeted. So this is government workers, people that used to work for the old system of government before the overthrow, ex-military, teachers, lawyers, artists, religious officials, etc. Now, if you think about what all these people have in common, these are really the leaders of society, if you think about it, right? You have government and social aspects to this, right? We have government workers and ex-military. that represents kind of the political sphere. Okay, in a communist system, we know that the government also controls the economy. So these are also the gatekeepers of the economy. So we have political, economic, and then you see we have teachers, artists, and religious officials. They're social. Okay, so the Khmer Rouge is targeting the political, social, and economic gatekeepers of its past for extinction. Okay, the idea here is they are going to remake Cambodia from scratch, and that means that everyone that came before has to go. Okay, that is the vision of the Khmer Rouge. This is embodied in their idea of what's called year one. Okay, year one is the idea that we are starting over from scratch, and this is year one. And they're going to kind of erase everything that came before. And they're going to tear down everything and rebuild it. Social, political, economic, from the ground up. And it's all going to be modeled after Mao's form of communism. So they're renewing their dedication to this hardcore form of communism. Another important vocab word that you may see with this topic is called the killing fields. The killing fields are collective mass graves in Cambodia where victims of this genocide were buried. Yale says that about 1.3 million people will be executed. So if you start doing the math on this stuff, there was somewhere in the neighborhood of 7.1 million people living in Cambodia when this started. So, this is 1 out of every 14 people or something like that. You guys can do the math on your own, is getting executed. And those are just people that are just getting straight up executed. There's a number of other people that have died as a result of starvation and displacement and, just kind of be shuffled around and kind of fall through the cracks. So when it's all said and done, somewhere between 1.7 and 2.5 million people are going to die as a result of this. So, they literally go town to town, city to city, the Khmer Rouge, and they just start rounding people up. Okay. And they do one of two things with them. Either they slot them for re-education, where they basically put them in labor camps and kind of educate them, they call it, but it's really a brainwashing and kind of indoctrination. So that they either do that or they just shoot them, which is a lot cheaper, faster, and easier. So there's both of those things going on. There's a couple of good movies about the Cambodian genocide, should you be so inclined. On Netflix, there's a movie called First They Killed My Father, which was made, I actually, believe it or not, by Angelina Jolie. And it does a pretty good job of showing what it was like for these people when the Khmer Rouge came to power. And they go through people getting rounded up and evacuated and sent to these re-education camps and executed. And they do a pretty good job of spelling all that out. And the classic is, this is from the 70s or 80s, I think, called The Killing Fields. Not quite the production value that you guys are used to, but that's kind of the benchmark Cambodian genocide movie that most people are most familiar with. So this is kind of the deal. All right.